quite small. Are you displaying it from phone?
Yeah,
okay.
Better this way.
I think it's better, but maybe I should try for us to see which one is best.
Okay.
Okay. Or I meant saying, what do you think?
Yeah, if you give it a try, let's say if it's the same, then she can, because she will be better suited because she would like to control her slide, the flow.
Yeah.
But let's see if we get if you have a better view from you.
Okay. Is it the same or?
I think this is better.
Okay. I'll make do.
We have 7 participants now, and maybe we may be able to start in another 2 minutes. Let's see if we have any additional person joining.
All right, sir.
Prince is struggling with his reception, so he might be joining late. Okay, it's 8:38. I think I will open the floor. Permit me to start today's webinar. I greet the presenter, NIFEMI CHRISTIANAH, and our mentor, Mr. Elias Kazim. Thank you for the efforts put into making this presentation. And then I greet everyone that are here on time, starting from the board members, Dr. Mubarak Mustafa, Ms. Pharmacist Nafisa Folari, and our executive, the only executive present so far, Salama, Jima Salama, Mr. Jima Salama, and also Ali Daoud. Thank you, one of the CEF Fellows. I appreciate you guys, and we have to start now in order to finish on time. I believe other people will be joining us later on. So before you proceed, I will just lay out what we should expect from today. Once I stop, the mentor would introduce the topic to us to give us an overview of what we should expect from the Fellow, that's Ms. NIFEMI CHRISTIANAH, and then that will be for about 2-3 minutes. Then we'll have the presentation proper from the fellow. That should last about 30-35 minutes. Then the mentor would give his inputs afterwards for about 5 minutes. So then that takes us to 42-43 minutes, and the last 15 to 30 minutes would have questions, answers with each person, and contribution with each person that contributing having maximum of 3 minutes to contribute, and any other business will follow. So I'll leave the floor to Mr. Elias Kazim now to give us an overview of what to expect from this presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this presentation today, which will be will be taken through the presentation by NIFEMI CHRISTIANAH. I must say that she has worked really hard in putting this presentation together today. And there are two things to remark upon at this preliminary stage. The first point is that she's talking about a topic which has also affected her, as other university students in Nigeria have also been affected by ASU strike, especially the ongoing one, which has been a very controversial one. But tonight, she's taking a very pragmatic approach to examining university autonomy and incessant strike in Nigeria with a poster, Who School Help? So you might have heard a lot of people out of frustration saying education doesn't help anybody, and they often make references to dropout students that made it in life. So she wants to examine that topic from an innovative perspective of autonomy. So if universities are autonomous, can we actually be able to eliminate or reduce a strike? Can we give university students better education if we're able to achieve autonomy? So the second aspect of the insights that she will provide is that as a law student, I see that our research would also give us insight into legislation, the legal aspect of university autonomy in Nigeria, whether any law has been made and whether that law is sufficient. So I will now open the floor for NIFEMI to take us through the presentation, which will examine university autonomy and incessant strike in Nigeria, Who School Help, and there will be room for questions and contributions as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Elias. NIFEMI, the mic is on you.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, thanks for making time to attend this presentation. So today we're talking about university autonomy and incessant strikes in Nigeria. And then there's a posed question at the end that says, who school help? I'm very grateful to the chairman for picking this particular topic for discussion, because this is a topic that actually relates to each and every public university students in Nigeria. And I actually wish more people would be able to attend this presentation so that they will know that all these strikes we have been expressing in Nigeria should not have happened in the first place. There could have been solutions to prevent all these strikes from happening. And what could have been done will be made known to everyone this night. So, and special thanks to my mentor, Mr. Elias Kazim Esquire, for his constant input and support. Thank you so much, sir. So next slide, sir. All right, this presentation is going to talk about some vital points like what university autonomy actually means, then the kind of autonomy a university require, and then we're going to look at if there's actually any law in Nigeria that provides for university autonomy. Also, we're going to examine, hello?
Yes, please proceed. We can hear you.
All right. So we're also going to examine financial autonomy of universities and how it relates to the incessant strike in Nigeria. And there are also going to be recommendations for attaining financially autonomous institution. After which I'm going to discuss the matter of whose school actually helps anyway. Next slide, sir. All right, so there's a saying that he who pays the piper calls the tune. I think this thing actually denotes a sense of freedom, because if you are the one paying the person who is playing the piper, then you are going to determine the tune is going to play for you. And I think in a way, this actually relates to the issue of autonomy. Now, what is autonomy? In the general sense of the word, autonomy is synonymous with freedom, independence, and self-determination. I think anywhere we see the word freedom, we can relate it to um, total control over things. Like when you have freedom, you have the ability to do some things that you have been unable to do before without some kind of undue influence or external control. Okay, let's say for example, when I was 10 years old, there's no way I have the freedom to travel from Ondo State to Lagos, because my parents will just view me as, no, you don't have the capacity yet. But now that I'm a 400 level university student of OAU, there's no way I'll tell my brother I want to travel from Ondo State to Ile-Ife, and they'll tell me that I'm not old enough. No, they can't tell me that, because why? Now I have the freedom to do that. This basically means that I don't need any kind of external control or influence before I can make my journey safely from Ondo State to Ile-Ife. So in a way, autonomy is actually like that. When there's autonomy, it means that entity that is autonomous has freedom and independence coupled with self-determination. And it means that you have control over your own actions and you're also free from external control. So next slide, sir. Now that we've known what autonomy actually means, I think it's time to use that as a backdrop to discuss what university autonomy means. So, Mureji Ross defined university autonomy as the freedom of institutions to function without undue control or influence by external forces or agencies. Simply put, this means that it is the freedom of OAU. Like I'm just making an example now. The freedom of OAU, the freedom of University of Ibadan, the freedom of University of Lagos to function without control or influence from external agencies such as the government, non-governmental organizations, and professional bodies, etc. So basically, university autonomy gives institutions the right to determine their own affairs, the right to make their own decisions, and the right to determine the cause of things. Education is an indispensable key to sustainable development. And in the national policy of education, education was described as an instrument for individual, societal, and national development, and also for the acquisition of skills. This means that education is basically a very fundamental part of societal development. There's no way you can go around this, either formal or informal. Education is important. You can't live in an ignorant society. You have to be educated one way or the other. And now, university is a major stakeholder in the education system. And since education is a very basic part of societal development and university is a major stakeholder in education, this means that university has to be granted autonomy. They have to be granted the right to determine the manner by which they are governed. They have to be granted the right to determine their capacity to control their own affairs and to shape their own destiny. So this presentation acknowledges that university autonomy and academic freedom are totally synonymous. They cannot be divorced from each other. So basically, a university that is autonomous also has academic freedom. Next slide, sir. So before I go to the kinds of autonomy universities require, I like to add that autonomy creates a situation where managers of universities are answerable to the academic community. This basically means that an autonomous university is kind of democratic in the way it functions because they answer to the academic community. They don't answer to any form of higher authority. They answer to the people that they are there to educate and to serve. So now we move to the kinds of autonomy that universities require. And then we have it is said that universities need to be given autonomy in 3 areas, namely administrative autonomy, intellectual stroke academic autonomy, and financial autonomy. Well, administrative autonomy deals with issues like deployment of staff, sanctioning of staffs who are kind of lazy in their duties and all. And then intellectual autonomy deals with the ability of a university to determine its curriculum, the ability to determine the class practices, the freedom to determine assessment scheme and all. And then financial autonomy, which is the most important kind of autonomy, basically deals with money. As we all know, nothing in this world can actually function without money. Even in the Christendom, people say that owó ni kẹ̀kẹ́ ìyìn rere, which means that money is the how do I put? Someone please help me with that. Money is the
Vehicle
Money is the vehicle of evangelism,
okay. Money is the vehicle of evangelism,
or something that basically fuels the evangelism to progress.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no way university will function without money. But then, where does that money come from? Does it come from internal resources or from external resources? How does financial autonomy affect the way a university runs? So we are going to say that in the course of the presentation. However, it should be noted that autonomy does not abdicate government's responsibility to fund universities, and it is not privatization. So this is telling us that the fact that a university is autonomous does not mean that the government can totally relax and be like, oh, there's no need to allocate budgets for education sector this year because they're autonomous. No, the government still has a role to play. It's just that their role will not be as active as it is now. Next slide, sir. So now we move to the most important part of the presentation, which is university autonomy in Nigeria. Does any law actually provide for university autonomy in Nigeria? Well, the answer is yes. In 2003, the Universities Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Act was passed into law, and this act was otherwise called the University Autonomy Act number 1, 2007. So yes, there's actually an act of the National Assembly that provides for university autonomy in Nigeria, and that act is called the University Autonomy Act. Right from the preamble, the act proclaimed the autonomy of university as the main objective. So the act basically proclaimed, like the act told us, so to say, that okay, this act basically provides for university autonomy, most especially in section 2, subsection AAA, where it vests the governing council of a university with the freedom to discharge its functions and to exercise its responsibilities for the good management, growth, and development of the university. Even though this act was titled the University Autonomy Act, this has to be the only section of the act that actually gives a university the freedom in the discharge of its functions. And I think this act is kind of pretentious, because when I read through the act, the other provisions were basically dealing with administrative kind of stuff. Nothing actually, there was no clear provision that actually provided for an autonomy in Nigerian universities. Anyway, next slide, sir. So yes, as I was saying, despite the expensive framework on paper, the enforcement of university autonomy falls short. I don't think I even need to stress this too much because it's very obvious seeing how we've been on strike for the past 8 months now. Because if we're in a country where there's university autonomy, the issue of strike wouldn't have happened in the first place. Like many other laws in Nigeria, such as laws on intellectual property, where we have laws like the Patent Act, Trademark Act, laws of law in Nigeria are just on paper. They are not actually functioning in the real life. And the University Autonomy Act is just one of such laws because though there's an extensive framework on paper, the enforcement of the act is just too poor. It's just too poor. I don't even think most Nigerian students know that there's something called University Autonomy Act. And to be honest, if not for this presentation, I don't think I've ever heard of it before. University autonomy, because I can't see any hint of autonomy in the way our universities are being run. The government basically controls everything. And also, there's no clear provision for financial autonomy, which is the most important kind of autonomy universities require. As I've said earlier, financial autonomy, finance, which deals with money, is at the core of everything. Nothing can run in this world without some kind of finance, and university is not an exception. So the fact that there's no clear provision for financial autonomy in Nigeria just goes to show how much we are actually we are autonomous in our universities. So next slide, sir. Sadly, autonomy in Nigerian universities remain largely an empty concept, as institutions are mostly dependent on government funding. I've said it before, most of our universities depend on the government. In my school, Obafemi Awolowo University, there are many lecture theatres that needs renovation. Oh, let's even put lecture theatres aside. There are many hostels that are in dire need of innovations, but nothing has been done. It's either the school is waiting for the alumni associations to come and do it for them, or they need some kind of government funding before things like this can be done. And this actually makes me wonder. Though we pay so little, I think I pay 20,000 naira for school fees per section. But then, where does all that money go? I still wonder if the government actually has a say in the way school fees are being spent in Nigerian universities, because most things that needs to be done are not being done by the university. It's just as if they're waiting for some kind of higher authority to come down and do it for them. And this just shows how poorly our universities are being managed. In a properly functioning system, a financially autonomous institution is free to determine how its resources are spent. They are free to set admission requirements, to access tuition and school fees. Now, coming down to Nigeria, though schools make money from some resources, like I think they make pure water, they sell bread, they offer car park service. Sure, money is being generated, but where does that money go? I think a large share of that money still goes to the government, and the government needs to have a say before such money can even be spent. And this has not been helpful in the running of the university. Also, a university cannot set its own admission requirements. Um, permit me if I'm Pardon me if I'm mistaken, but when I watch American high school movies, and the hero or the heroine of the movie is about to graduate from high school and go to college, there's a way I've never seen them write a central exam like JAMB in their news before. There's always some kind of process that each school lays down for its applicants. So I think they kind of write essays, they check your grades from your high school and all. There's never been a time where I have seen them writing a central exam like we write JAMB and post-UTME here in Nigeria. So this actually gives such schools the right to set their admission requests. Unlike Nigeria where JAMB controls admission processes, a school cannot even determine the student is going to take or how they want to admit students. But everything has to be determined by JAMB and other agencies like the National Universities Commission. And that has totally wrenched autonomy from the hands of university. Also, a university cannot freely decide to access their tuition or school fees. I think there was a time in my school in OAU, I think 2019, where they were trying to raise the school fees for medical students, and I think the school was proposing it, but the comments was just they were just I don't know playing them around. They didn't give them the go ahead. And but let's just imagine that the school was financially autonomous. They didn't have to depend on the government for that for anything. They could have made such decision on their own without any kind of undue influence from outside sources. So I think that has that's really sad. Also, salary should be set independently across institutions. Each university is supposed to have their own salary scheme for their staffs. But as it is now, all university staffs, um, I think they're on the same salary scheme. There's no difference anywhere. University autonomy ended when university staff ceased to be employee of different autonomous university council and became parastatals monitored by government ministers. This sentence right here proves that even though we have University Autonomy Acts on paper, it doesn't function in Nigeria. Why? Because most university staffs are actually civil servants. They are supposed to be employees of university council, but now they are under one umbrella, which is called the National University Commission. So now their conditions of service have been negotiated with the government. Basically, they're not working for the school, they're working for the government. Next slide, sir. Yeah, so their conditions of service have to be negotiated with the government such that even though a separate salary scale has been worked out, it remains subject to governmental control. So a university cannot even determine how much its staff is going to be paid. Everything has to be discussed and have to be agreed to by the government. So this just shows how totally dependent we are on government for finance and for every other things that a university needs to work smoothly. These issues and more have been the fundamental cause of the crisis in the education system, and the incessant ASUU strike will be taken as a case study. Next slide, sir. Yeah, ASUU, Academic Staff Union of Universities. Before I got admission into the university, I used to hear ASUU. I think there was a time when my elder brother he got admission, and the very first week they were sent back home because of ASUU strike, and then he spent like 8 months extra at home. And right there, I was just thinking that, oh God, is this how things are going to be if I eventually go to university in Nigeria? And now see me, I'm supposed to be done with my final exams, but I'm still here in 400 level first semester because of ASUU strike. ASUU strike have been so repeated that they are almost known as a yearly event, because even if there's a year where there has been no ASUU strike, students will be like, what is happening? ASUU has not gone on strike this year. So some students are even pray for ASUU strike these days because it's like a normal thing. Over the course of 23 years, ASUU has embarked on 16 strikes. Just imagine that 16 strikes in 23 years. And it's not, and those strikes are not just 1 week strike or 2 week strike. Now, take this one for example. We've been on strike since February, and here we are in September, and no headway, no progress has been made. Don't even know when we are going to resume. When people ask me that, when are you going back? So I just basically tell them that, see, I don't have hope for this again because ASU is not ready to resume, and the government too. They're not. Education is not their, it's not at the top of their priority list right now. So more often than not, the bone of contention is usually the government's poor commitment to the payment of academic end allowances, assault on academic freedom, poor funding of universities, refusal to adopt the university transparency and accountability solution, and refusal to and so on. If you look at most of the reasons why ASUU have been going on strike here, we have number one, government's poor commitment to payment of academic end allowances. I think if there had been financial autonomy, these reasons would not have been in existence in the first place, because a financially autonomous institution will not have to worry about the government's poor commitment to the payment of academic allowances. Why? Because the institution will be the one to cater for that. So their staff no even need to worry about that kind of problem. Also, assault on academic freedom. Why won't there be assault on academic freedom when most of our funds are gotten from the government? He who pays the piper dictates the tune. The governments are the one paying our lecturers. They are the one funding the universities. So of course, they have a say the way things are being done. And if there's some kind of intellectual research that's supposed to be carried out, but will be some kind of betrayal to the political party that's on the throne. There's no way the government will allow such kind of research to be undertaken. Why? Because it won't favor them. So of course there tends to be assault on academic freedom. Also, we have reasons like poor funding of universities and refusal to adopt the university transparency, and all these things are just, they all relate back to lack of financial autonomy in Nigeria, because a financially autonomous decision won't have to worry about these problems. Is that following?
Yes,
Yes.
I think
All
we're
right.
with you.
Yes, we are following you.
All right. Next slide, sir.
Yes.
So what does all this suggest? The cogent point is that incessant strikes are consequence of the fact that Nigerian universities lack financial autonomy. This is just the basic problem that is causing ASUU strike. And it's not only ASUU strike, it's not only ASUU that actually goes on strike. ASUU goes on strike. We also have the non-academic staff called NASU. They also go on strike. I think I even heard that some guys at the computer lab in my school went on strike. There are so many unions and they all go on strike because the governments refuse to fund universities the way they're supposed to be funded. With government as major financier, most important decisions have to get the government assent before anything can be done. And institutions where government does not concede, the union's ultimate resort is to go on strike. So the flip side is that a financially autonomous institution does not need to answer to the government on important issues, nor will there be need for fruitless negotiations with the government before conditions of service of staff be set out. This actually means that if University of Lagos is financially autonomous, if University of Ibadan is autonomous, if University of Zaria, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, if these universities are financially autonomous, the government won't even have the right to use them to do ACO. There's something called in Yoruba that's called finish ACO. This aspect is just like the government is using ASUU to do ACO, like, and finish ACO is like you people don't have a choice. you have to wait until we are ready to give you the money you want. That's just basically what this strike is all about. Because either we like it or not, ASU needs money from universities generally need money from the government. And until the government is ready to pay them, there's nothing we can do other than to wait. But let's just imagine that our universities are autonomous. Everything is being run by the university. We generate our own resources. We pay our staffs. We set out our admission requirements. Government won't even have the mouth to be doing anyhow to us. We go into universities with the exact dates that we are going to graduate. I've been in university now since 2018, and I don't even know when I'm going to go. When people ask me that, when I go to law school, I just smile some kind of painful smile because that question has no answer, and I don't know when the answer will be. I just know that, oh, I don't know. It's all in God's hand now, and FG and ASUS, and like we're literally begging God to just let ASUS alone, which is not supposed to be so. All in all, external influence in university affairs will be reduced to the minimum if only there is financial autonomy. Next slide, sir. All right, so you're talking so much about how financial autonomy is like the balm to the pain and the solution to the remedy to all sickness in our education system. So now, how do we go about attaining autonomy in Nigeria? What are the recommendations? What are the paths to attaining this university autonomy that we've been talking about since? And I think one of the very first steps is that university staff should cease to be parastatals but should be employees of different autonomous university councils. This basically means that instead of university staff being civil servants, OAU lecturers should be under OAU. They should not be under the federal government. UI lecturers should be under UI Governing Council. They should not be under federal government. University of Zaria lecturers should be under University of Zaria Governing Council, not under the federal government. If this can be done, we will see that government interference will be reduced to a very low minimum, and also the issue of strike will also be reduced. Why? Because the government will be the one pulling the strength. It will be the school. So whatever strike that would later happen will be determined by the governing council of a school. And in such case, the fact that UI is on strike does not mean that OAU is on strike. And actually, I think when that is done, it will be like some kind of competition between the schools, because if people know OAU to be school that goes on strike because of their internal problems, not because of the government's issue now. If people know that, oh, okay, OAU is the one that usually go on strike, people won't even need to apply to OAU again. They'll be going to UI where they don't have strikes at all. But I think being financially autonomous will actually bring about some kind of healthy competition among universities, because I think we actually need that in Nigeria. Healthy competition. Our universities that they are just too relaxed. That's who that they don't strive to be better. They're just there because they know that, okay, they have no choice than to come to our school anyway. So why do we have to do better? Also, universities should be given the authority to generate fund internally and a power to disburse the fund so generated. Well, some universities actually generate their fund, but they are not enough to cater for their financial needs. And I think most of the funds being generated, they don't even have the power to disburse it the way it is needed. So I think the University Autonomy Act has to be amended, or maybe another one has to be made totally. One which we include, which we vest universities with the authority to generate funds and also give them the power to disburse such funds in an appropriate manner. Also, universities should raise their quality by means of collaboration with industries, global organizations, and professional bodies. I've been in university for 4 years now, and I've never seen my university collaborate with any kind of global or professional bodies in a bid to improve their quality of education. Why? Because they feel they don't need to. There's no need to. there's no competition between them. So I've said they're just so relaxed concerning education, and that is not good enough for our education system. And also, once universities have been given authority to generate funds, austerity measures should be adopted to eliminate wasteful expenditure. After all, we are all humans. People in the governing council of universities too, they are humans, and they are likely to want to embezzle university funds. So to prevent such from happening, measures should be put in place, such as an audit committee to audit the way the funds are being spent and all. Next slide, sir. Okay, so I recommended earlier that for universities to attain financial autonomy, one of the most important things to do is to generate funds. Now, how can universities generate funds? Number one, you can generate funds from donations from big industrial houses or alumni. I said it earlier that universities these days don't want to spend money, but they just expect their alumni to 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 be spending money. So I think instead of collecting money from alumni and using it for nothing tangible, those monies collected from alumni should be channeled towards doing something more sensible and more meaningful, such as using such funds to run things within the university instead of depending on the government for funding. Also, universities can get money from offering special courses. We all know course era and the way they offer all these online courses from universities like University of all these big universities abroad, like maybe University of Oxford, New York, University of New York, and University of California and all. So and those they get paid. People that want to take those courses actually get they paid a huge sum of money for those courses, and those universities generate money from such. So I think we can also do that kind of stuff here in Nigeria, whereby universities offer special courses to people at a price. I think that would be a very effective way of generating funds internally. Also, universities can launch consultancy services. Already, universities are viewed as experts in the society. So, a university with a consultancy service will be viewed as something that has high value. People will actually want to consult a university consultancy service because they feel like they have more to offer than just a random person who just open up a consultancy. So that I think they'll prefer going to a university consultancy service. And also, they can create assets through infrastructures such as they can build a shopping mall and rent it out to people that need them. They can build a hall and rent it out for events. There are lots of things to do. They can build a conference center or maybe even uh, a kind of hotel. We have such in my school where there's a very big conference center in my school where people come to rent it for events, and there's also a hotel right next to it where people that come for such events can also go there to lodge for the night. I think that's a very good initiative. And also you can also generate money from car park services and hostel fees, also from tuition fees. There are basically lots of ways for people for schools to generate money internally. Yes, slide, sir. Okay, as an afterthought, we actually ask who could help anyway. And there's this saying that if you think education is expensive, then maybe you should try ignorance. These days, I've heard people say that school na scam. Who could help anyway? What other language they use to help with school? All those kind of abusive words towards education. And I can't really blame them because although some people take these words at face value, most people say it as a sign of frustration to their education. Me personally, I can't count the number of times I've told people that, oh, see, school na scam. Why? Because I'm already tired of the constant strike. Each school year, my school has always been going on strike. There's never been a complete school year where the strike has not happened. No, there must be a strike. Shani. A strike must happen. So during such moments, people get tired and be like, oh God, when will this stop? Anyway, school na scam. Who school help anyway? I'll just go and learn a trade and those kind of stuff. So when people take this word at face value, it's usually an expression of frustration with the constant interruption to their education and lack of infrastructures. People are getting tired of these interruptions, and some might even prefer technical schools. And then some even make references to people who who are dropouts, but then they are very, very successful now. Some people take that as kind of inspiration to actually boost the claim that who school help, that okay, even the people that went to school, they have nothing to show for it. Whereas you see somebody that don't go to school and they've been making it big in their industry. So I think that has been one of the major causes of the saying that schools could help. However, this indifferent attitude towards education should not deprive people who need university education for their discipline. I'm just saying that although some people don't really value education, but there are still some disciplines that requires a university degree, because I doubt if anyone will ever allow a dropout surgeon to operate on them. Will they? Or will they allow a dropout lawyer to defend them in court? As I am now, I am a law student foreign level. I can't imagine. There's no way. There's no matter. There's not much how brilliant I am or how very vast in legal knowledge that I am. Once I become a dropout, I don't think anybody will actually want me to go and defend them in court. There's no way that will happen. But I'm able to say that who's I'm not saying that if you really think education is useless or it's too expensive, perhaps you should try ignorance, and then you should see if you won't come running back to education. No matter how much you want to claim that who school help or school na scam, we still can't jettison the idea that education is very, very important. And why is it important? Education is one of the very core bases of our sustainable development in the world. Education is not something that is applicable in Nigeria only. It has been around for a very long time in different parts of the world, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So if we think education is expensive,
Two
let us
minutes,
try ignorance.
please. Sorry to interrupt. 2
All
minutes. I
right,
sent
sir.
a message to you.
Yeah, I'm almost done. So if you think education is expensive, let us try ignorance first and see if we can really afford to be ignorant. Anyway, all this actually relate back to university autonomy. Once you can attain financial autonomy in our institutions and everything starts to go smoothly, then I think the, the saying of who could help will reduce to a minimum, because then people will begin to see that education is a very valuable thing in society. Next slide, sir. So in conclusion, we've we've talked about the fact that autonomy characterizes the university system worldwide, and it's one of the cherished ideals of a university. However, these ideals have been eroded in Nigeria by certain national imperatives and constraints, which includes the fact that although we have University Autonomy Act, it's only functioning on paper. It does not apply in real life scenarios. So, and this erosion has had dire consequences on our education system. And one major part is the occurrence of incessant strikes for the past 23 years. I believe that we can set things aright if the suggested recommendations can be put to use, and surely notable progress will be made in our education system. Next slide. Next slide, sir. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, NIFEMI. Thanks so much. You've taken us through a wonderful presentation, and then I would, before I give my own comments, I will leave the floor to Barrister Elias to give his afterthoughts of the presentation, and then we can start contributions. If you have contributions, then after Mr. Elias, you can raise your hand, and you would have 2 minutes, 2 minutes to contribute, or 1 minute to ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought that presentation was quite thoughtful in pointing out the issues arising from the problems that we currently have in the university system, right? So thank you very much for the hard work done and for putting the presentation together. I just want to point out some of the certain areas that my contributions will be. One is in terms of the legal perspective, where a law is made, and it's really a lazy approach to lawmaking, with due respect to those that are making it, when you have inadequate textual provisions in the law. So a law clearly set out the objectives to achieve. In this case, it says we want university autonomy, and that objective is clearly pointed out. But you don't then have adequate texts, adequate words within the law to actually, achieve that clearly stated objective. For example, it has not been thoughtfully considered that objective of autonomy will come in different ways: administrative autonomy, academic autonomy, or academic freedom, or intellectual freedom, and then financial autonomy. So that in setting out the textual provisions of the law, there must be adequate provisions for each of those types of autonomy. And if a careful decision has been made not to pursue a certain type of autonomy, it will be clearly stated, so that the law can say, oh, it is recognized that financial autonomy exists, but we don't want to pursue it for so and so reason at this time, and it will be pursued at another time. Because we have some of the legal framework like that, where it is a progressive provision. If I cited an example of electricity reforms, where the law established power holding companies, spending the time that there will be full privatization to now have private companies own it. So, but the point is that silence on a particular important issue, or speaking in only very few words, writing only very few words to express the textual provisions of a law that was meant to achieve a certain important objective, is a lazy approach to lawmaking. So it means that there's been an inadequate enactment on what that law is meant to achieve. So you now have a situation whereby you have a framework that is empty. So you have a house, but you don't have all the fittings, all the windows and everything. So this law says we would achieve autonomy, but how? There's no sufficient details on how and what kind of autonomy will be achieved. So it is at that point that we then move into implementation of the law itself, that the implementation of the law itself has failed, but even the textual provision of the law is inadequate in itself. So before we now start to talk about what you've rightly pointed out, that it has not been fully implemented, nobody even knows about that law, and it's only on occasions where this kind of issue arises that we begin to become aware of that particular law. Talking more practically, when you spoke about healthy competition among universities, I think I should speak more on that, to tie it down to your point that we're not saying universities, federal universities, for example, should be privatized. That privatization is different from autonomy, So presently, the question I want to ask, which is a rhetorical question, is that, do our universities currently engage in healthy competition, or do they engage in what I can call rent-seeking attitudes? So rent-seeking attitude is when university is sitting down waiting for the rent to be collected from the federal government, So until that money comes in, and whether or not productivity is achieved in that kind of university, the rent will still come in anyway. Whether or not productivity has been achieved in one university more than another university, the rent-seeking attitude or rent-seeking approach is that whether OAU and University of Ibadan, the University of Lagos, ABU, whether or not they have achieved different levels of productivity in a particular year, they are still entitled, all of them, to, because all of them are federal government employees anyway, and their conditions of service are uniform. It's not like I think Nigeria is the only place where you can find that kind of thing, because I work for a University of Aberdeen as a teaching fellow. First of all, I'm not an employee of the UK government. So when you work for the University of Aberdeen, you are an employee of the University of Aberdeen, and your productivity level is measured by the university itself, so that the way and manner your terms and conditions of service are run is within the university. So if you don't meet your key performance indicators, the university has a system also to deal with that kind of situation. Now, when it comes to the collective performance and productivity of the university can never sit down to wait for rent seeking. There is minimum level of research output that must go out of that university in a particular year. And when if government is funding universities, most of the funding from the government will come based on that productivity, so that the universities know that they are in healthy competition. So a situation whereby everybody is federal government employee does not even let us know which university is performing better. So one university may have very high impact research output in a particular year. So when we say government should not abdicate their duties, government should also eliminate rent-seeking approach to funding university system. So if you say all of your employees, I will pay them, all of this one, I will pay them, everybody knows whether they achieve anything or not, the government is going to pay. As opposed to, what if we have a situation whereby the funding that comes to university from the government come in different buckets? There is one basic funding that everybody will get. There is another funding that everybody will get based on your productivity. And there are research grants that you will get based on the research that you're putting out at that point in time. That's when you can say you're beginning to have, you're going to have healthy competition, as opposed to everybody just depending on rent seeking. The government has clearly been irresponsible, because we must point out that those lecturers are working really hard, and they are doing so for very little as well. They are not getting paid competitively compared to what people even in private universities are getting paid in Nigeria. You understand? So, but the point is that it's not the fault of those lecturers. Those lecturers are individual persons. It's a system that they are operating in, that has been structured in a particular way that is schemed against them, right? So, which is why a lot of time people say, ASU, there's problem with ASU, they are abusing. The lecturers are not the problem. The government itself, how have they structured the funding of the university in a certain way that could have encouraged or discouraged healthy competition or rent-seeking approach, in which case there will be promises that cannot be kept, because every year in and year out, they will promise, they will negotiate, they will reach an agreement. Federal government has been, liable in not fulfilling agreements, because some of those agreements that ASU is referring to are agreements that date back to 2009, 2010, and beyond. Okay, now, another point which I have noted is when it comes to IGR, internally generated revenues of universities. I'm happy that NIFEMI pointed out a number of ways within which universities can actually generate funds. I don't really know much about how they disburse, whether and what level of control they have over those internally generated revenue. But one very big loophole in the internally generated revenue of federal universities in Nigeria is the tuition fees. The tuition fees are not commensurable to the level of university education that we are getting. So NIFEMI mentioned now that in a federal university, you're paying like maybe 25,000 naira or 20,000. In real value of money in Nigeria today, if we really ask questions in a year, what 20,000 can purchase, the purchasing power is very, very low, right? So the conversation would be, can a university increase the school fees? Should it? Will it block access to university education, especially where a lot of people cannot even afford that 20,000 that we are talking about? So you have a lot of problems because the tuition fees are very low and cannot really achieve anything if you wanted to. If you want to build any good road within university, let's say you want to tar road from one hostel to library within university system now, you know how many millions of naira you're talking about, just that road alone. Before you come to electricity, before you come to water, before you come to paying staff, before you come to other things, there would be, like you said, other ways of generating. The ideal situation would be to generate money from multiple sources, such as even infrastructure, even research funding, special courses, government funding, like you've mentioned. But that component of school fees itself is a problematic angle, because if you try to increase the school fees to be able to generate more money, you are faced with vast majority of students that will not be able to afford the fees. And that will lead to another kind of strike with the students. And we are operating in a situation whereby we don't have systems in place to actually address that inadequacies, those inadequacies. So it's not like you have student loans for students. It's not like you have, reputable scholarships that students can actually apply to.
2 minutes, sir.
Okay, yes, I'll round up. I think I only have one more point after this one. So we don't have student loan, we don't have reputable scholarships, we don't have reputable bursaries, we don't have things that can shock, that can bridge the gap. So, which is why any university cannot even wake up today and say they want to increase their school fees. They are going to be faced with another strike from student union, and NANS, all of those student associations and all, because they are operating in a very dangerous environment that students will no longer be able to afford, and there are no alternatives to be able to do that. So what do? They are clearly pitched up against so many problems where they rely on government that is clearly irresponsible, does not meet agreement. They cannot increase their school fees. I'm not even sure how much they can do that without government's control as well, even if the students were to be willing to allow that to happen. And then the last point that I wanted to speak about is that the statistics about the strike is just alarming. It shows that we have a lot of problems in our hand. If in the past 23 years they've gone on strike, there was one data I was reading in the news, and it says in the past 15 years, ASU had embarked on strike cumulatively for 5 years. So they've only worked for 10 years in the last 15 years. For every 2 years that they've worked, they've gone on strike for 1 year. How can we sustain that? And I got to know that there is even something they call solidarity strike, where some universities are going on strike for something that does not even concern them. But they are going on strike to be able to protest on behalf of the other affected people. Those are the things that you wouldn't find if the universities are autonomous. I cannot imagine a particular university having issues and going on strike and other people that are not affected. Even this ASU strike that they are on now, I learned that some state universities that are not funded by the federal government, are also part of ASU, and they are joining solidarity or whatever it is. That's just ridiculous, So I don't know what we're going to do, but I clearly have to yield the floor now. But I agree with you that if the universities are autonomous, it would solve the problem of having to, rely on government that has not been responsible or responsive.
Thank you very much, Barrister. That's quite a lot of stuff to take in. I can see Bharat's hand up. But just to summarize, this is a systemic problem, obviously. So one, the concept of autonomy is only on paper, and we've talked about the lazy approach to forming law and enacting law. And then we've talked about the internally generated revenues from schools and government irresponsibility and several other factors. It boils down to a multi-systemic, a systemic breakdown. You understand? So we need a systemic approach to it. We've talked about student factor. Education is largely subsidized. In fact, it's mainly free, in our institution. So that gives federal government a stake, a lot of stake in it. So we've had some recommendations which we'll be going over. But before I yield the floor to Dr. Mubarak, I think Prince, you should work on making sure all fellows attend and hopefully larger audience from the society, because this is a very topical issue and it should benefit a larger audience. We made this recommendation last time as well. We'll try to make this presentation available. Probably we might start creating a YouTube channel where we make this available for people to benefit from our discussions. More so, at the board level, we might try to look into the University Autonomy Act or law and see if we can make recommendations to either the Federal House of Assembly or the National Assembly as an organization, you understand, so that it will be our input or wherever we can start from, because there are quite a number of suggestions that have been made here that could go into that. Whether that will be successful or not, but I think we can make that effort. So thank you. I'll leave the floor to Dr. Mbarak now.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks NIFEMI. Thanks Mr. Chairman and Barrister Elias and Prince for the wonderful job you've been doing always. Yeah. Just to, I would like to just hit the point straight. People have said so much regarding the autonomy and the bottlenecks, especially the legal one, and I wouldn't like to dwell more on that. I think when it comes to the problem, the main problem that we actually have as far as Nigeria is concerned, Nigerian universities are concerned, is the financial autonomy. And if we are being frank, both parties are to be blamed. There is a part of the government, and at the same time, there's a part that HASU needs to do. Just to remind us of some of the agreement that they actually signed, back in 2009, and when we look at it, we'll see how impractical those agreements are. Part of the agreement that was dwelt on funding of universities, where both parties actually agreed, was that each federal university should get at least 1.5 trillion naira between 2009 and 2011, while state university within the same period should receive 3.6 million per student. As at that time, our budget was just about 4.5 or 5 trillion naira. So how practical is that? And that was as far back as 2009. So, and there are also many parts of the agreement that if we sit down and try and decipher it, we'll see that practically this is something that is just not realistic. And what the federal government has been telling us so far is, let's sit down, let's have a roundtable discussion. We know that this agreement must have been signed out of duress. Government doesn't want HASU to resume, all those kind of the typical way in which Nigerian politicians do things. They just want they want HASU to resume strike and all that. So any paperwork that they just bring to them, they just get it signed and all that. And HASU continues to sit on the fact that you signed this agreement and you should honor the agreement. But in reality, we don't have the financial means. There is no way the federal government could actually implement such thing. That is on the one hand. On the other hand, moving forward, how can we solve this, especially the financial autonomy? There is no university in the world that survives on just governmental funding. I was researching into top universities in the world, top countries that have a very good education system, very university education system, and how they are being funded. I discovered that 40 to 50% of the money actually come from fees, especially international fees. And say, for example, in the UK now, we discover that for every fee that an international, a local student pays, an international student actually pays doubles. And one of the problems the UK government is having with UK schools in recent times is they've been absorbing so many international students. And the response that the UK university board were giving to the government is there's no way they can fund the school without international students, because they gain a lot from those international students in terms of finances and all that. So to make sure that they have enough money to run the universities, they have to tilt towards taking more international students than local students. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is it still boils down on finances. So if you are being realistic, the way forward is we need to pay more. How are we going to pay? Is it going to be in terms of loan or is it going to be cash down? That would be another topic of discussion. I think it will be very difficult. An average student in Nigeria, in terms of the quality of education, shouldn't pay less than 350 to 500,000, for example. If you are to start running the university the way it's supposed to run, there is no way you have a medical student or a pharmacy student and you want them to get the best of whatever they are doing and they'll be paying partly 20,000 or 25,000. Like somebody said, if you convert it to pounds, that is almost non-existent. So in summary, I do reckon with what NIFEMI says about how to generate money. But in reality, if you look at the list, the long list of those things you mentioned, most universities in the world, they don't even generate 10%. It doesn't even contribute to like 10 to 15% of where they get the money from. Largely, they get the money from international students. If the school is a well-recognized school and is being projected or being, being given the right trajectory, so they attract university students. They charge them a lot of money and they get a lot of money. And then secondly, from the local student, they get a lot of money in from them. They will now move to the governmental grants and research grants. So in that order, that's how they get money. So as you need to be realistic, federal government needs to also be, they also need to be honest. Like Barrister Elias has said, I wouldn't want to go into the legal bottlenecks and all that. That's thing itself. When you look at it, we'll see that there are so many vague terms and conditions in there. And I think we just need to go back to the drawing table, be realistic, and even we masses, whatever they come up with, we should try and embrace the reality. There's nothing like we can't pay, we can't do this, we can't do that. Government should find a way to come in and supply grants or give grants to maybe students that are good or something like that, or whichever way they want to subsidize it. But in reality, they can't finance universities if they really want them to perform very well. And if they can't finance university in such a way that they'll be very competitive, then the only way out is for students to pay. So everybody have to shift their ground. That's the summary that I'm trying to make. I thank everyone for all your contributions tonight. Yeah, so by and large, we all need to go back to the drawing to be and be realistic. Thanks.
Well, that's a brilliant submission. Thank you very much, Dr. Mubarak. So to summarize, one is the fact that there are blames to pass onto both parties. There are responsibilities for both parties, the government and the lecturers, and even the students and the larger populace has a role to play and a ground to shift in this quagmire. And talking about financing the university education in Nigeria, tuition fee is almost non-existent. Okay, and it's a suggestion have been made to an average of 350 to 500,000 naira, per annum for people studying professional courses and stuff like that. Of course, there will be the discussion about the wages, the minimum salary, and all stuff like that, and how people will be able to afford it. But even in places like the developed world that we usually like to make reference to, many a times people go through these courses on loans, that they get to pay over time. You understand, over time, between 5 to 10 years, as long as. And you might not necessarily have to pay if you don't start earning up to a particular salary. So it's only when you start earning a particular salary that you will be able to you will start paying that the fee back in a very little fraction, that would not be necessarily distressing to you. However, whether the context of Nigeria is ripe for that or not is another thing we need to examine. But it is a point to consider if we really want the university system to work properly. Because truly when you pay 20, 25,000, 30,000 naira as tuition fee, there's only little to nothing that the schools can do, and other sources of incomes might not necessarily be as buoyant as that. Another thing is the content of the agreement between federal government and the ASU, which is quite vague and unrealistic. So it requires going back to the drawing board. And there's a point that is very important there. You know, in Nigeria, we don't separate politics from governance. So you realize that we play politics with everything across all sectors, and that's what's affecting us now. So, and that's why strikes will always, by the time the government is in the second, third year, they're preparing for another election, that will be strike, because that is when they listen. So that's another point and another part of the whole discussion entirely that needs to be looked into. So there are some sectors that you don't toil with. You don't toil with your education sector. You don't toil with your X sector. You don't toil with your economic sector. In fact, you shouldn't toil with any sector, okay? There should be a framework of how things work, you know, without necessarily interrupting it with politics and playing politics with the lives of and properties of people that you govern. So excellent points, and that will also be noted. Also, in addition to what I've said, that we need to start transcribing our presentations like this and collating all the recommendations that we've made throughout, and see how we can make everything at the end of the fellowship year. We can make everything into a collection, you know, and that can be possibly published in a book or something. Thank you very much for that. Prince, you've been raising your hand intermittently. You have something to say? Is he still here? I think we lost him to connection. Okay, any other person? Contributions, suggestions, questions? Okay, I have a comment coming from Mr. Basarudin. Professor Pius Obanya of the University of Ibadan posited that university autonomy in Nigeria is nothing but a mirage and can't be attained till the university system is purged of the heavy politicization. Yeah, exactly. So the university system, the education system is largely politicized, and you know, until we detach from it, which the politicians are not ready for, sadly, they will always have problem. Even by the time you give autonomy, the governing council will be controlled by some people, by the government, you know, and then they would also dictate the tone eventually. So because who would employ the governing council? If the governing council have staffs of the university, who would employ them? You know, so it brings us back to the, you know, to the loop. Thank you for that contribution, Mr. Ibad. Okay, I'll give any other contributions. The turnout from the fellows is not too encouraging. If you remove the board members from this conversation, we have only NIFEMI and Ali as fellows. You know, NIFEMI is a presenter, so that's not encouraging. And the floor members, we need to find a way to get them involved in this conversation that we're having monthly. So I think I have somebody typing. Mr. Albert is typing again. He says we should wait on her. Okay, while we're waiting, I'll give the floor back to Mr. Elias Kazim. I think we cut him short. If you want to contribute again, you can have the floor. And Emton, you're welcome. Thank you. You came a bit late. Thank you for making effort to join us. Elias? Okay. Ali? Okay. He also raised the point of the overwhelming subsidy on the government and how unrealistic it has become. Yes, we've made a credence to that as well, because education is heavily subsidized in Nigeria. By the time an individual is paying, you know, the school fees that we're paying, but if you go out and you start seeing what other people are paying, even the so-called indigent, governments have been able to realize that, no, this is not sustainable. There are other ways to impact on the life of people, you understand? Even though, even when we pay 350, the government will still make a contribution to it. They won't be able to pay everything, you know. So government will just say, okay, this is the cost of education currently in Nigeria. The cost of education when they made this submission of paying 20,000 now is different from what the cost of education is at the moment. So this is the cost of education currently, and the government will be paying this percentage. To the equivalent of the remaining percentage was 20,000 then. It is whatever it is at the moment, and that is what students would be made to pay. You understand? So you cannot be using the estimation, the value of money back in 50, 30 years ago, 30, 50 years ago to be, deciding your reality in 2022. So definitely, no, we have to move past that. We have to be, we have to come to terms with the reality of things. Our economy, our IGR, what's it called? The total money the country, our budget, So yes, thank you for that submission again. Okay, it doesn't seem anyone wants to say anything again. We have 6 minutes to the hour of 10.
Yeah, I can say something.
Oh,
right.
Okay, yeah.
So
have the floor.
Like we're saying, I think the problem, in all honesty, both the government and ASU themselves knows that the current system is highly unsustainable. But the problem is the vested interest from both sides. From the government point of view, they don't want the populace to turn against them. Say PDP, APC, or whichever party they don't want a situation in which they will bill the student 350,000 and everybody will say, oh, this government, they don't like citizens and all that. So they're trying to
make a poor decision.
Yes, so they're trying to play that politics. From the ASU hands, they also understand the fact that you cannot eat your cake and have it. Somebody cannot be paying you salary, employing you, giving you letter of employment, and at the same time you'll be dictating to them. It's not possible. Federal government is saying we want to pay you through IPPIS. We are saying that this is a university system. It's different from how other people are being paid. So therefore, you can't be paid via IPPIS. IPPIS will prevent them from working in the private universities and collecting salary in the federal universities at the same time. And these are the things they've been doing. Somebody will be working in IFE and will be earning from JABO at the same time. But IPPIS will pay because you only have one payroll and you can only get paid through a particular system. So in fairness to ASU, they actually have the point, you understand, when it comes to other things that they offer, because they offer other services as a lecturer that is actually different from teaching. And the payment government is doing, the government is providing is just payment for teaching, not payment for other services, especially consortium and all that, all those things that they do for private universities. Sometimes they go there to mark their script or do other things which are private. And these are things that are obtainable anywhere in the world. In the UK, you can be lecturing somewhere and you can still take some jobs, you know, outside your normal lecture. So long you can contain all those things and it doesn't affect your job, nobody cares. So it's like what we've been saying, they have to go back to the drawing board and say, this is how we want these things to work. You understand? Governments, on one hand, they need to be very, very sincere and say, yes, we need a better education system. And as well, at the other hand, they also need to be realistic and say, this our demand is just too bogus and it's not realistic. We need to tone things down. But the problem I have is majority of those people that formed our leaders, you know, they don't actually have a vested interest in the education system itself. Before now, it used to be university education that they don't allow their kids to attend. But I can tell you that even secondary schools or even primary schools now, majority of them, they don't even send their children to anything again. So starting from primary to tertiary, all the powerful ones, you understand, all the influential ones, they go to private or they go abroad. So they don't actually care what happens to the poor people. So it's been like how primary school, secondary school were when we were young. University still has some level of standard when we were young, maybe say 20 years ago and all that. And even the kids of Yaradua, they all attended Nigeria University to an extent. Some of them, they attended Nigeria University. But if you look at things now, the way secondary school and primary school were then, that our own parents didn't want to send us to public school, that's the same way university system is becoming now. So they don't really care about what happens there and all that. All they want to do is, let's keep the masses happy, whatever it takes, even if the whole system becomes so rotten that nobody will be interested in going. I mean, the real people that knows the value of education, they don't care. The most important is, let's keep the masses happy. Let's give the little token we are giving and all that. Then we'll just keep the system running. And ASU is trying to say, no, we need to do something. But the problem is federal government is not ready to do something. And if federal government says they want to do something by increasing the fee a little bit, ASU is saying that it's too little. They want them to implement fully the tutorial agreement. We are investing partly 5 to 6% of our budget on education. And as we want them to move it to 25%, there's no way it's done anyway. That is not sustainable. It's not done anyway. You can't say somebody should move from 5% to 25% at one go. You understand? So in summary, it's a lot of bottleneck. In fact, I'm just looking forward to how eventually the whole argument and all that, how they'll be able to solve it and all that, because it just looks like something that is a bit difficult. Yeah, it might just be a blessing in disguise, meaning that at the end of the day, we might have something that we can build on, from this strike. That's what I'm hoping for, because it will be so, how will I call it? It will be so disappointing that people will have to sit at home, or they have to go on 9 month strike. And at the end of the day, nothing good will come out of this. So I hope that will not be the case. I hope in the next 1 or 2 months, because like you rightly said, whenever election year is coming, that's when strike used to come around, and politicians won't have a choice than to just sign something and say, okay, let the youth go back to school. When they go back to school, they won't be able to, engage in some activities that will not profit the nation and all that. So I hope that pressure will make federal government to do the right thing this time. And I hope ASU too, they'll be able to shift ground so that at least we can have something that we can build on, from now on. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Well appreciated. Yes, the degradation in the education system has now gotten to the tertiary education, which started in the primary schools, then got to the secondary school, and now at the tertiary level, we are experiencing it now. Even an average family manages to send their ward. Somebody that is not earning 20,000 naira is taking loans and stuff so that to send their children to private universities or state universities where they pay a huge sum. What that means is that if they can pay, if governments can actually look into that and make them pay 50% of what is obtainable in private of state university, and make the education actually steady and effective, people would come to that reality rather than allowing the university system to continue to deteriorate. It's been a wonderful session for us today, and we've talked about things that affect the lives of everyone in the fellowship, because we have university students there. We hope that we can put our thoughts together and send it across to the appropriate quarters, and also that the government and ASU would not make another decision under pressure that would have to revisit in another 2-3 years, and a lasting solution can be made from it. But looking at this, they're not talking about all of these things. It's just about fulfill your agreement. We cannot fulfill the agreement. I'm aware the federal government also takes ASU to court, or ASU takes federal government to court, and ASU has been asked to go back to class. ASU says no, appealing the injunction and stuff like that. In the end, we hope they can put the interest of the masses into consideration and make a decision that will provide a lasting solution to all of these problems. Thank you, NIFEMI, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Barrister Elias, for the awesome moderation or mentorship, and I appreciate everyone that has made time to attend today. Thank you, and I'll call it a night now. It's been a wonderful time. Good night.
All right, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night. Bye.
Bye. Barrister Elias.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I saw the group that you shared with me. I've seen them a long time ago.
Okay.
Yes, but I just realized that our core objectives were not the same.